Counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor. Oops. Thank you, Your Honor. Are you enjoying this?
Yes.
Okay, we'll keep going, then. Alright, when you first started working at Neverland, did you go through a training type program?
My supervisor trained me.
And who was that?
Gail Goforth.
Okay, and what did the training consist of?
Just taking me around and showing me what my duties would be.
Okay.
They can't hear.
Is that better?
Pardon me.
That's fine.
Okay, and has your job changed during the time you were working at Neverland?
Basically stayed the same.
Okay, did you go through any other training programs while you were at Neverland?
We did CPR training.
Okay.
Otherwise not for the job. No, not that I can think of.
Okay, you were interviewed by the Santa Barbara sheriffs a couple of times, right?
Yes.
And they asked you if you were aware of the Arvizos' feeling that they were confined at Neverland and couldn't leave. Do you remember that discussion?
Yes.
Objection. Hearsay.
I don't remember that discussion. You asked her, but I'll sustain the objection.
Do you recall, in your interview with the Santa Barbara sheriffs, discussing the question of whether or not the Arvizos were free to leave Neverland?
Yes.
But you basically laughed at the idea, didn't you?
Objection. Calls for a conclusion. No foundation.
Argumentative. It's sustained.
Didn't you tell the sheriffs, how hard is it to leave? Just walk.
Objection. It's argumentative. Calls for a conclusion.
Overruled. You may answer. Do you want that question read back?
Yes, sir, please. Record read. Yes, something along those lines.
Okay, and in your opinion, the idea that they would be confined at Neverland, is ridiculous, right?
Objection. Argumentative. Calls for a conclusion. No foundation.
Sustained.
In your police interview, or, excuse me, one of them. Actually, it's the sheriff's. In your sheriff's interview, you described the Arvizo children as destructive, didn't you?
Yes.
You were asked questions about Mr. Jackson's relationship with the Casio family in your sheriff's interview, right?
I can't remember, but I'm sure you'll tell me if I did.
And you indicated that Michael was a close friend of the entire family, right?
Yes.
Including the parents and the children, the boys and the girl, right?
Yes.
Okay, now, the prosecutor for the government asked you some questions about other young boys, as he put it, that Mr. Jackson knew through the years, right?
Yes.
And would you agree that, like most people, Mr. Jackson sometimes became a closer friend of some families rather than others, correct?
Yes.
And the so-called young boys, the prosecutor referred to would come with their families, correct?
Yes.
In fact, Jimmy Safechuck was married at Neverland, wasn't he? Do you remember that?
I didn't even know he was married.
Okay, Macaulay Culkin's family would come, right?
Yes.
Did it seem? Let me rephrase that. You've said that during the time you've worked at Neverland, thousands of children have visited, right?
Yes.
But certainly there are families that Michael Jackson, in your opinion, was closer to.
Yes.
Than others, right?
Yes.
There are friendships he's developed through the years which seem to have lasted for many years, correct?
Yes.
And like any other human being, some families would visit periodically, rather than others, right?
Yes.
There would be many celebrity-type visitors to Neverland from time to time, right?
Yes.
You would see the Brandos.
Yes.
Who else would you see?
Elizabeth Taylor. Chris Tucker. I think Chris Rock was there. I don't know the names of the basketball players.
And did the people you just identified seem to be close friends of Michael Jackson?
I wouldn't, as far as I could say. I don't think that all of them were close friends, but some of them were, I think.
And from time to time, there would be various functions at Neverland, right?
Yes.
And, for example, you would see tents put up for a special event, right?
Uh-huh.
Please tell the jury what special events you recall seeing at Neverland.
Weddings, birthday parties, that kind of things.
Would you get involved in those events?
Serving and cleaning, yes.
Okay. Is that something you looked forward to?
No, I still don't.
Alright, laughter. Would it typically vary from month to month how many functions, as you described, would take place?
Yes, it would vary.
And sometimes you would have hundreds of visitors for these functions, right?
Yes.
And where would all these people park?
They would park down by the amusement park. It depends on where the tent was set up. Or they would park in front of the gates that are inside Neverland with a big sign that says, Neverland, over it. There's a new parking lot there.
And would you agree that most people who visit Neverland like to walk through the main house, don't they?
Walk through the main house.
If they can.
Yes.
They like to see all the artwork and the antiques and the way Michael Jackson has decorated his home, correct?
Yes.
And isn't it typical that visitors will make a request, can we see the main house?
Sometimes they have, yes.
And is it your understanding that quite often Mr. Jackson will allow someone to take them through?
Yes.
He allows that a lot, doesn't he?
Yes.
Sounds like you don't think he should, right?
No.
Do you think he's too nice to a lot of people who visit Neverland?
Sometimes, yes, sometimes I got a little concerned, but it's not my place.
Okay, you thought he was being too generous and nice to visitors, right?
Yes. And sometimes, yes.
Okay, when did you notice the Arvizo children becoming so destructive?
Towards the end of their stay, in the beginning of 2003.
The beginning of 2003.
Yeah, towards the end of their stay in the beginning, 2003.
Did you make any complaints other than the one you just described?
Not that I can remember, no.
Okay. Now, I was asking you a question, and I think I got sidetracked a little bit. It had to do with the availability of alcohol in the kitchen. Remember that question?
Yes.
And isn't alcohol found in the kitchen from time to time?
Yeah, I think by the sink to the left. There was a cabinet that did have some alcohol in it.
And that generally wasn't locked, right?
No.
Would you find alcohol once in a while in the refrigerator unit, you know, with the see-through glass?
Yes, we would put that in there.
Going back to these functions that go on at Neverland, sometimes Mr. Jackson isn't even there, right?
Yes, sometimes he's not there.
So there will be a function for hundreds of people, there will be a tent, there will be staff, there will be food, there will be parking privileges, and Mr. Jackson won't even be at Neverland, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Now, you never saw Mr. Jackson give alcohol to a minor, did you?
No.
And when you said that you saw 3 kids at the table one time that you were concerned might be intoxicated, you never saw Mr. Jackson give them anything.
No.
Now, are you aware, excuse me, let me just limit this to a time period. Let's say 2002, 2003. You were aware that Mr. Jackson had some medical problems from time to time, correct?
Yes.
And you would see his doctor, for example, come to Neverland once in a while, right?
Yes.
And you were aware that he needed injections.
Yes.
And he would, at times, have a reaction to those injections. Do you remember that?
Objection. Foundation.
Sustained.
When you said, you used the term, Pinocchio's Pleasure Island, in response to the government prosecutor. Were you suggesting that you thought Michael Jackson himself should supervise kids more personally?
No, I don't think that he should. I mean, how could he supervise that many children? There needed to be more people to supervise them, or their parents.
So were you. Excuse me. Let me rephrase it. Were you meaning to be a little more critical of their parents when you talked about kids being out of control?
Well, yes, that too. Because some kids, some parents won't discipline even their own children, so sometimes the parents didn't even help. But I think it's just sometimes the character of the person, too, because some of them were just crazy.
Yeah, Did you ever voice your concerns that parents should be paying more attention to their kids at Neverland?
I might have, over the years, to some of my coworkers. But I can't think of anything right now. The thing that really worried me that I can say that I thought about, too, is that there's a lake there. And I worried more about the lake than I did about the pool. If you leave these children unsupervised, I mean, they could fall in the lake. And that's just always what concerned me more.
And you would see lots of children that you thought should be better supervised at Neverland during periods when Michael wasn't even there, right?
Yes.
And your understanding was he had allowed people to bring children to Neverland, enjoy the premises, and when he wasn't even around, right?
Yes.
When that would happen, was it your understanding that Mr. Jackson was relying on the Neverland personnel to try and supervise or keep control?
Objection. Foundation. Personal knowledge as to what Mr. Jackson knew.
Overruled. You may answer.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Yes. When large numbers of children would visit Neverland with whoever came with them.
Uh-huh.
And Mr. Jackson was not there, was it your understanding that Neverland staff or employees were supposed to supervise?
Yes, to some degree. And sometimes there was some children that got really out of control. Like, for instance, I think sometimes we would put the golf carts away or put the quads away, because some of them they would probably have been a danger to themselves. So in that way, we did take a little bit more authority, probably, than we should have sometimes, but...
When you say you would take authority, do you mean that you would sort of, in your mind, substitute for a parent almost?
Yeah, sometimes, I think, yes.
And are you talking about situations where, say, a lot of kids would come on buses, say, from the inner city, and in your opinion there would be too few adults taking care of them?
Typically those seem to be better supervised than the kids that were left at Neverland without their parents.
Right.
Because if Mr. Jackson wasn't there and their parents weren't there, it kind of would fall on us, and...
Okay, were there rules and procedures in effect at Neverland?
Somewhat, yes.
And were they written up, to your knowledge?
As far as there was an employee handbook.
And to your knowledge, did the employee handbook discuss what to do in situations where you had visitors?
I can't remember, sorry.
When is the last time you looked at that handbook?
Probably, 92, 93.
Okay, that was quite a while ago. Alright, now, in your interviews with the Santa Barbara sheriffs, you often described Mr. Jackson as acting like a big kid.
Yes.
But he seemed to enjoy playing with kids, right?
Yes.
He seemed to enjoy the whole spirit of Neverland being to have fun with kids, right?
Yes, the whole thing of eating too much candy and riding the rides to get sick.
Did you see Mr. Jackson do that?
No, I'm not saying that he did that, but I'm saying that's the idea.
Did you see Mr. Jackson eat a lot of candy?
Sometimes.
How about on the rides?
No, I didn't see that.
When did you last work at Neverland?
September of 2003.
Okay, so you worked for, 12 years or so?
Off and on, yeah.
Off and on?
Off and on.
Okay, you never saw the Arvizo kids look like they were intoxicated, did you?
No, I don't remember them specifically being intoxicated. I don't.
You don't remember you looking at their behavior and saying to yourself, they look intoxicated to me, right?
Yeah, no, they...
That never happened, right?
No, I didn't really ever pay attention.
Okay.
So I don't know.
But just based on the times you were there, and the work you did and what you saw, you don't recall ever seeing Gavin Arvizo, Star Arvizo, or Devellin Arvizo intoxicated, right?
Well, like when Star put the knife in my back. I mean, was he intoxicated? I don't know. Was he just playing around? I don't know. So...
Let me just rephrase it, then. To the best of your knowledge, during the time you observed the Arvizo children at Neverland, you never thought they were intoxicated, right?
I didn't think so, no.
Okay, did you ever, in your mind, smell alcohol on the Arvizo kids?
No, I never paid attention.
Okay, now, You mentioned a party in August of 2003, right?
Yes.
And that had something to do with Schaffel, right?
Yes.
Was it your understanding that Schaffel hired special staff for that party?
I knew that he was doing something with it. If he hired somebody, I don't remember. But I know that there was a lot of volunteers working there.
People that normally didn't work at Neverland.
Yes.
Okay. And was it your understanding that Schaffel was trying to promote a particular artist?
I don't know that.
You don't know what the purpose of the party was, right?
It was a birthday party, and I didn't quite ever figure it out.
Okay. You don't know if Schaffel, for example, was promoting tickets on radio stations in Los Angeles, do you?
No, but I remember a radio station being there, I think, yeah. But I don't know what the whole purpose was.
Was it a Los Angeles radio station, if you know?
I can't remember.
Okay.
I think it was, though, when I think back. I want to say it was Kiss FM, but I'm not sure.
Was it your understanding that more people showed for that party than the staff at Neverland anticipated?
Yes. That was typical.
Typical of parties.
Yes.
Now, when you're planning a party, excuse me, let me rephrase that. When a party is going to take place at Neverland, how does the word get out to the staff?
It depends on how big it is or if there's going to be a caterer. I mean, there's different ways that we would find out.
Is a memorandum, for example, a memo,
Yes.
typically generated?
Not, I don't want to say, typically, but it has been, or else it was communicated verbally from a supervisor.
And would a supervisor typically come to someone like you and say there's going to be a big event on such and such a date at such and such a time?
Yes.
And would you be asked to contribute in some way?
Yes.
And were your jobs at these events typically the same, or did you have different things to do, depending on the event?
Cleaning and serving.
Okay. And where would all the food typically be cooked?
It depends on if there was a caterer or not. Sometimes it could be done at the barbecue area. Sometimes in the kitchen. Or if there's a caterer, they could cook it outside. Or there was a barbecue out by the theater. So there was different places.
Do you remember, in February of 2003, a number of entertainment executives from New York visited Neverland?
Oh, Guy, I remember there was some special guests, but I don't remember who.
Do you remember Ed Bradley from
60 Minutes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You do remember him coming?
Yes.
Do you know approximately when that was?
No, I can't say. I think it was after the documentary aired.
Do you know if the Arvizos were visiting at that point in time?
I think they were. My stomach's growling. I'm sorry. Laughter.
Do you want some candy? Do you want some?
I have some. Thank you.
You can't do that, ma'am.
Did you speak to Mr. Bradley?
No, I don't think he spoke directly to me.
Okay. Do you remember who he was with?
Other camera people. The crew. I think there was somebody else from 60 Minutes that was there, too.
Did you ever meet a Mr. Jack Sussman, for example?
I can't remember.
Okay. Did you see Mr. Bradley walking around the property?
I remember him being in the kitchen. And I remember serving him lunch or setting out the food, a buffet for them.
And where was the buffet?
In the kitchen, on the, what do you call it? A bar.
So Mr. Bradley and whoever he was with were in the main house, right?
Yes.
And you don't know what time of day they were in there, do you?
No, but I want to say it was 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, something like that, 1 o'clock.
Okay. And one of your responsibilities was to prepare a meal for them.
No, I didn't have to cook it. I would just have to help serve it and, yeah.
And were they eating at the main dining table?
I know they ate in the kitchen. And they might have eaten at the dining table also, but I don't remember.
Okay. Do you recall Gavin and Star Arvizo visiting Neverland with their father David?
You know, in the back of my mind, I do. But I don't remember anything specific about them being there.
Okay. Do you have more of a memory of their being there with their mother?
Yes.
And your memory of the Arvizo children being at Neverland with their mother is in primarily 2003, is that right?
Yes.
Do you recall if you observed Janet Arvizo supervising her children while they were staying at Neverland?
What do you mean by supervising?
Well, do you recall if Janet appeared to be keeping tabs on her children at Neverland?
She stayed in her room a lot.
But you said you would see her in the main house, right?
Yeah, when she went to go eat, or pick up her clothes from the laundry room, or...
Would you see her in the main house with her children?
Yes.
Did you see her in the main house with her children often?
In the evenings she would mostly be there.
In the main house?
Yes.
Okay, and what would you see Janet Arvizo doing in the main house in the evenings at Neverland during 2003?
Eating dinner, sitting with the kids, playing a game that was on the counter in the kitchen. Just being with the kids.
As best you can recall, would you see her spend hours in the main house at night?
I don't want to say hours, but she'd probably spend a couple hours there. I was always so busy working, I didn't really pay attention to what really the guests were doing.
Did Janet Arvizo, in your opinion, tend to have her evening meal in the main house?
As far as I can remember, yes, is what I would say, yes.
And would she typically eat with her children?
I don't want to say typically eat with them, because they might eat at different times.
But I guess what you're saying is, you served her quite often, didn't you?
Yes.
Now, in the main house, when a guest comes to eat, there often is a menu on a blackboard, right?
Yes.
And the menu will say what's being served that day, right?
Yes.
And it could be breakfast, lunch or dinner, right?
Yes.
And was it your understanding that Janet Arvizo would decide each day what type of food she wanted?
Well, if it wasn't written on the blackboard, you know, the chefs or we would tell them what we had for dinner that night.
And while the Arvizos were there, they would essentially give you their order, right?
Yes, I remember taking the order from the Arvizo kids at the dining room table. More often than not, they would eat in there. For a while, anyway.
When you saw the Arvizo kids eating with their mother, was there often anyone else at the dining? Excuse me. Let me rephrase that. When you would observe the Arvizo children eating with their mother in the main dining room, did you often see Michael there?
No, not typically.
Would you typically see someone else having dinner with them?
With the Arvizo kids?
Yes.
Well, the Casio kids were there for a while when the Arvizos were there, and they would all eat dinner at the dining room table. And Gavin's mom wouldn't be at the dinner table, and neither would Mr. Jackson, for a while there.
And where would where would Janet Arvizo typically eat if she wasn't at the dining room table?
At the table in the kitchen area, or like at the bar.
Would you please describe for the jury what you mean by the bar area?
It's just a place where you have like bar stools, where you have the long counter, and there's just bar stools sitting there. And it has an arch with bricks over it, and it's right there by the kitchen.
That bar area is not far from the main dining room, right?
No, it's not too far.
And typically if you go there any time of day, you see some seats at the bar area, right?
Uh-huh.
And 24 hours a day, you'll see glass dishes with various buns and
oh, yeah.
donuts that were made for the day, right?
Yes.
And Mr. Jackson lets people go in there anytime and pick up a donut and take it with them, right?
Yes.
And that refrigerator area is typically open, right?
Yes.
Guests can walk in there and get juice or water or whatever they want to, right?
Yes.
And you would see Janet in that bar area quite often, is that correct?
Yeah, that's where I remember her eating, would be there.
Would she sometimes eat before her children ate in the main dining room?
I can't say if it was before or after. But for a while there, she wasn't eating with them.
But you also saw her eat with them from time to time, didn't you?
Yes, she had, too. I think that the reason why they were eating in the dining room, the kids, was because the Casio kids were with them. and they were the ones that were eating in the dining room. But later on, she would eat in the breakfast, or the breakfast nook or the bar with her kids.
When you say, breakfast nook, would you see Janet eating breakfast in the main house?
I really didn't.
I'm going to object as cumulative. Relevancy.
She already said she didn't work in the mornings. Next question.
Okay. Would it be accurate to say that Mr. Jackson seemed a lot closer to the Cascio children than the Arvizo children?
He's known them a lot longer, I think, so I think that he's formed more of a bonded relationship with them.
Did it appear that when the Cascio children were at Neverland and the Arvizo children were at Neverland, that Michael Jackson would spend more time with the Cascio children than the Arvizo children?
Yes.
You indicated you remember the Cascio children having food in Michael Jackson's bedroom, right?
If that's what it was, yes.
And when you say, bedroom, you're talking about this part of the house that has 2 levels, right?
Yes.
You go through a door and there's a bottom level.
Uh-huh.
Right. And then you can go up the stairs to an upstairs level, right?
Yes.
And you've seen the Cascio children on both levels, right?
Well, the only other time that I've really been in his bedroom is when he wasn't home, to help move furniture or to put something in his room. So I was only upstairs in his bedroom that one time when the Cascio kids were there when I was serving dinner, and that was the only time.
And to your knowledge, they visited Neverland for years, right?
Yes.
They've been visiting Neverland since you first started work, right?
Yes.
Do you know the father, Dominic?
Yes.
Have you seen him there often?
Yes. Not as much as the children, but he was there often.
Did you meet with any prosecutor to talk about what you were going to say today?
I spoke with them about coming here, yes.
And when was that?
Yesterday.
Who did you speak with?
Mr. Auchincloss.
Was it by phone?
No.
Did you have a meeting with him?
Yes.
And where did the meeting take place?
At my house.
Okay. And did Mr. Auchincloss come to your house?
Yes.
Did you have a meeting with him?
Yes.
How long was the meeting?
An hour or two. 2 hours.
Was anyone else there?
Detective Alvarez.
Okay. Did Mr. Auchincloss give you anything to read?
No.
Did you talk about what you'd be asked today?
Yes.
And did he tell you what questions he was going to ask?
Just kind of gave me a guideline about where everything was going to go.
Did you discuss with him what your responses to the questions might be?
Yes.
Did Mr. Auchincloss give you any suggestions?
No.
About how to phrase things or anything like that?
No, 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 no.
So he would ask you questions and you would just tell him what your answer was, right?
Yeah.
And it went an hour or two?
Yeah.
Okay. How many meetings have you had with Mr. Auchincloss?
2.
And when was the first meeting, other than the one you just described?
Probably around January.
Okay. And where did that take place?
My house.
How long did that meeting last?
2 hours.
Okay. Did Mr. Auchincloss give you anything to read?
No.
Have you ever been sent anything to read about this case from either the sheriffs or the prosecution?
No. I think that I don't know if I saw a copy of my testimony or something. I think I saw that.
Did you? Okay.
I think.
Do you know where you got that? Did somebody give it to you?
No, nobody gave it to me. I just saw it.
Okay. We're almost there.
Okay, thanks.
From now on your subpoenas, I want you to put, bring an energy bar. Laughter.
Okay. All right. I think we're done.
Okay, great.
Just 1 second, if I can. I'm going to backtrack for a second. May I, Your Honor?
Go ahead.
Where is the ranch house?
Probably like a half a mile or a mile away from the main house.
And please describe for the jury what the ranch house looks like.
It's just an older home that I think was there before the main house was built. And it has 2 bedrooms, and 2 bathrooms, and a living room.
And do guests sometimes stay at the ranch house?
Certain guests, yes.
Do employees sometimes stay at the ranch house?
Yes, they have.
You don't often see Mr. Jackson at the ranch house, do you?
No, he's been there, but he doesn't really stay there.
Did you ever see the Arvizos there?
Not that I can remember.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Counsel.
Miss Fournier, did you ever deliver food to Mr. Jackson at the ranch house?
Yes.
On how many occasions?
Well, I don't know if he was there. I know that Joey was there, and he called to get some food to be delivered to the ranch house.
Okay. Did you take the call?
I don't remember if I took the call or not, or somebody told me, but I brought the basket of food down there.
Do you know, what were your instructions as far as this basket of food goes?
To take some munchies down to the ranch house.
On that day that you took some munchies to the ranch house, did you see Mr. Jackson in the presence of children after that period?
Yes.
Did any of those children appear to be intoxicated?
Yes.
Do you remember what their names were?
I think Joey was there at the table.
Do you know Joey's last name?
No.
Okay.
And there was. I don't remember their names right now.
Okay. Were any of these children local children from the local community?
Yes.
Do you know what town they're from?
I think Los Olivos.
Do you remember any of their names?
I can't think of any of them right now.
Alright. You talked about the fact that there was a certain amount of excess at Neverland with children.
Yes.
How long did that go on during your period of employment? How long was it that you felt that children were allowed, didn't have boundaries?
Well, the first day that I got there was silly string all over the inside of the house, so I don't know if you would consider that, but, no boundaries, but just something like that.
Have you ever seen Mr. Jackson intoxicated?
Objection. Foundation.
Overruled. You may answer.
I don't know if he was intoxicated or he was under a doctor's orders taking medication. I don't know.
Alright. My question goes to intoxicated by any substance, regardless of what. Did he ever appear to be under the influence of some substance?
Yes.
Did you ever see him where he appeared intoxicated in the presence of children who appeared intoxicated?
I can't say for sure on that one.
If you have an opinion, I'd like to know it.
Objection. Asked and answered.
Sustained.
You said you can't say for sure. Why is that?
Objection. Asked and answered.
Overruled. You may answer that.
Well, that one time at the table, I remember him appearing like he might be intoxicated when I was serving.
Alright. When the other children were also intoxicated?
I believe some of them were, yes.
Yes. The 3 children that you mentioned.
Yes.
Did Janet Arvizo ever have food delivered in her room?
Yes.
When the Casio children were there, did they spend time with the Arvizo children?
Yes.
Would the Casio and Arvizo children spend time together with the defendant?
Yes.
Do you believe that Neverland is a healthy place for children?
Objection. Improper opinion.
Based on I can finish the question, add a little to the question.
You may finish your question.
Alright. Based on everything you've seen there, you've talked somewhat extensively on cross and direct about these boundaries, and about children misbehaving and authority, that kind of thing. Based on everything you've seen and know about Neverland during your period of employment there, do you believe this is a healthy place for children, healthy environment?
Objection. Improper opinion. No foundation. Relevance. 352.
Sustained.
Would you allow your own children to stay at Neverland?
Objection. Relevance. Improper opinion. 352. Foundation.
Relevance. Sustained.
How far is it from the main gate of Neverland to the main residence?
I'm really bad on distances, but a mile and a half maybe.
And how far is it from the main gate to the nearest town?
5 miles.
You mentioned that there were visitors that Mr. Jackson would invite into his house, and that was somewhat common. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. Would he invite these visitors who came into the house? Typically would he invite them into his bedroom suite?
Objection. Foundation.
If you know.
All right. Answer: yes or no, if you know whether or not visitors were invited.
Yes.
You do know.
Yes.
Would they spend time in his bedroom suite?
Yes.
Objection. Foundation. 1108.
That's fine. I'll move on.
I'll overrule the objection and limit the questions in that area based on your objection.
Okay. You can go ahead and answer that question.
She did.
Thank you.
The answer was yes.
You mentioned the phrase, wild boys. Can you tell me what you mean by that?
When the children were unsupervised, they frequently became wild.
And this supervision issue, or the fact that children would become problematic in their behavior, was that known to Mr. Jackson based upon, well, let me back up. Did the children's misbehavior occur in Mr. Jackson's presence?
No.
Was he aware that they would destroy things at Neverland?
Objection. Calls for speculation.
Foundation. Sustained.
Do you know if Mr. Jackson was made aware of the destruction of golf carts, things of that nature, at Neverland?
Sometimes I think he was, because he would notice that things were broken or things were missing. So sometimes, yes.
The families of, you mentioned on cross-examination that the list of boys who were special friends of Mr. Jackson, you said that their families would stay at Neverland. Is that true?
Yes.
Would any of those children on that list stay at Neverland by themselves, without their families?
Yes.
Do you recall which ones?
Brett Barnes did. Elijah did. Little Michael did. Is that enough?
Well, I can make this simple. I can go down the list. Frank Cassio.
Yes.
How about his brother Aldo?
Yes.
Macaulay Culkin.
Well, as an adult he was there alone. But when he was a child, I pretty much remember his parents being there when I was there.
Brett Barnes.
He would come alone sometimes.
Elijah.
Yes.
Gavin.
I remember Gavin always having his mom.
Okay. How about the Los Olivos boys that you've talked about?
They would be there without their parents.
Jimmy Safechuck.
I think he did come a couple times without his parents.
Wade Robison.
Objection. 1108.
Sustained.
I believe it's a follow-up to counsel's question. But I'll move on. You said that you had a conversation with Frank about being an employee.
Yes.
Did he tell you who he was an employee of?
No, I just assumed it was Mr. Jackson.
Was he working at Neverland Ranch at the time?
Yes.
What time period was this?
I don't remember. I'm sorry.
Okay. Do you know if it was in the year 2003?
No, it was before that. I want to say about like 2001 or 2002.
You said that Frank and Vinny had desks set up in the video library.
Yes.
When was that?
Oh, boy, I don't remember.
But it was the period of time. Do you know if it was the period of time when the Arvizos were there?
Well, the desks were up there then, yes.
Do you know if Frank and Vinny were working at those desks during the period of time that the Arvizos were there?
I believe so, yes.
Do you know who Frank was working for at that time?
Like I said, I assume it was Mr. Jackson.
You said that busloads of kids would come to visit Mr. Jackson at Neverland, or visit Neverland, I should say.
Yes.
Was Mr. Jackson there typically, when the busloads of kids would be there?
Not typically, but sometimes he was.
Would those children spend the night?
Not the busloads of kids, no.
Okay. So was there a difference between the kids that would be guests and children who would just come up in a busload?
Somewhat, yes.
Was there a difference in the behavior of the children who were guests of Mr. Jackson than the behavior of the kids in the busloads?
Objection. Vague.
Sustained.
As far as Mr. Jackson leaving the ranch, you said that would be a frequent occurrence.
He did every once in a while. And sometimes we knew when he left, and sometimes we didn't.
Was there a difference in the attitude and behavior of the employees when Mr. Jackson was on the property?
Objection. Vague.
She's an employee. I think she's qualified to answer it.
Relevance.
The objection is overruled. You may answer. Do you want the question read back?
That's okay. I think I got it.
You think you got it.
We would always try to be on our absolute best behavior when Mr. Jackson was home.
And why was that?
Because we were supposed to, and because, nobody wants to get fired.
You said that Gavin always treated you with respect.
Yes.
You were asked a question about did the Arvizo boys crash any carts, and then your answer was, all of them crashed carts. What did you mean by that?
All the kids that stayed as guests. I mean, I can't think of anybody that would be exempt from crashing of the carts.
So that would be a destructive behavior of all the kids that stayed.
Objection. Leading.
I'll withdraw it. You said that Star Arvizo pulled a knife on you in the kitchen.
Yes.
All right. Did you feel threatened?
No.
You're smiling.
Well, I mean, I didn't feel comfortable about it. Who wants a knife in your back, but...
Was it your impression that Star was joking with you?
Yes. I thought he was joking and trying to assert some sort of authority.
All right. He didn't hurt you with the knife.
No.
And what did you say in response to him?
You're going to have to catch me first.
So did you feel like you were joking back to him when you said that?
Yeah, I was.
Objection. Leading.
You may answer the question. You started to answer it. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I didn't like it, so.
When you said that, did you feel like you were joking back?
Objection. Leading. Mischaracterizes the testimony.
Well, it's asked and answered.
Well, did you run afterwards? That's the...
No.
So you weren't serious when you said that?
Objection. Leading.
Sustained.
Were you serious when you said that?
Well, if he would have chased me, yes.
But did he chase you?
No.
Okay. As far as the destructive behavior, the problem with the guest unit where the glass was broken, I think you said soda was spilled on the floor.
Uh-huh.
Do you know when that occurred?
Objection. Asked and answered.
Not by me.
Overruled.
It was towards the end of their stay in the beginning of 2003.
Okay. Do you have a distinct recollection of all these events being in the beginning of 2003?
With the rooms being a mess, yes.
Fair statement. So do you know, what shift were you working at that time?
Usually the late shift.
So you saw the room in this condition at what time, approximately?
Actually, I think those few times I came in, the room was a mess. I think that they had actually left the property, because it was during the day that I had seen that. So sometimes I would work earlier hours if there was nobody there, too. So it wasn't required that somebody would stay late to serve dinner. So I think those instances would be more during the day that I remember them, not at night.
Okay. And when you say they were staying in that unit, what does that mean?
That they were sleeping there.
Okay. Do you know that they were sleeping there?
No.
Do you have any idea where those children were sleeping on those given nights?
No, because I wasn't there.
Okay. So, all right. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you. No further questions.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may step down.
Okay, thank you.
May the witness be subject to recall.
Is it okay if I go?
You're free to leave. The attorney's indicating that they may want to call you back, so that would be if somebody telephones you only. Under those conditions, you would have to come back.
Okay, thank you.
Call your next witness.
Shawn O'Grady. Your Honor, I would indicate to the court we're going to go back into the area that we were exploring yesterday. All right, we'll do.
Face the clerk and raise your right hand.
I do.
Please be seated. State and spell your name for the record.
Ruby Wolff. Wolff.
We have the wrong witness.
I'm sorry.
This is Ruby Wolff.
I know that. She was already here.
You called O'Grady.
I know. We changed it. She was already in the courtroom, so. You're employed by the sheriff's department.
Yes.
You're going to have to lean into that. How long have you been employed by the sheriff's department?
6 years.
And what is your present duty assignment?
I'm a detective.
And where are you assigned in your detective responsibilities?
Santa Maria Station.
All right. And back in November 18 of 2003, were you assigned to participate in the execution of a search warrant at Neverland Valley Ranch?
Yes.
And specifically, what was your duty assignment at that time?
I was an interviewer and also a searcher.
And during the course of the time that you were a searcher, did you seize anything at the location?
Yes.
And could you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, where was it that you seized the item?
It was in the master bathroom in Mr. Jackson's residence.
And specifically, what was it that you took?
It was a card.
And where was the card located when you saw it for the first time?
It was next to a dresser next to a sink in the bathroom.
And what did you do with that card after you seized it?
I took it to Detective Padilla.
And he was what we call the scribe, is that correct?
Yes.
You told him where it was located?
Yes.
Where you found it? Do you have that exhibit with you?
Yes, I do.
Let me identify it first. No, the bag. Your Honor, I have a brown bag with the number 310 in the upper right-hand corner in black. And we've marked this as People's 712 for identification purposes.
All right.
Now, would you just remove the item that's inside the bag? 712. And do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
And was that the item that you seized and gave to Detective Padilla?
Yes.
And is it in the same condition as it was at the time that you seized it?
Yes, it is.
All right. Move that 712 be admitted into evidence, Your Honor.
May I look at it for 1 second, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. No objection, Your Honor.
All right. It's admitted.
No further questions, Your Honor.
May I just look at the card, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. Does, Detective, is that the...
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Detective, you found this card where?
In the master bathroom.
Okay, and the card says, I miss you, Daddy Michael, correct?
Yes.
Did you read the card when you found it?
Yes.
And what did you do after you read the card?
Gave it to Detective Padilla.
Okay, now, this card says the following. Dear Daddy Michael, how are you? I can't wait to see you again and play with you at Neverland, because we are going to be best friends and you are my daddy forever, right?
Right.
It says, you are the finest grown-up in the world. I love you, Daddy Michael. And tell my little brother and little sister that I love and care about them. Thank you for everything, Daddy Michael. Thank you for being my Daddy Michael. Thank you for helping me be happy and beat cancer. Happy Daddy's Day, and I love you more. Love, your doo-doo head, Gavin Arvizo, right?
Yes.
And then there's a heart and there's print inside the heart that says, I love my Daddy Michael forever, right?
Yes.
And then it says, P.S. Please give me your new phone numbers, because I miss talking to you. And then the writing continues, my phone number is 626-452-1693, right?
Yes.
Now, this card was in the purple envelope, right?
Yes.
And the envelope was addressed to Daddy Michael, from your son Gavin, right?
Yes.
And you see little faces that appear to be sort of written on the envelope, correct?
Yes.
Did you ever discuss this card with anyone besides the person you gave it to?
No.
Okay. Did you ever see it after you gave it to the person you gave it to?
Not up until coming here.
Okay. Did you know, when you came in here, you were going to be asked questions about this card?
Yes.
How did you know that?
We were just told to review our evidence.
Okay. Were you told you're not going to be asked questions about anything else you seized, just the card?
That's the only item I seized.
Okay. So during your search, that was the only thing you actually seized that day?
Yes.
Alright. Do you recall having a meeting before the search with all of the people involved in the search?
Your Honor, I'm going to object is beyond the scope of direct.
Sustained.
Did you receive any direction before you seized this item from anybody?
Same objection, Your Honor. It would call for hearsay.
You can answer that, yes, or no. You may answer.
Yes.
Who did you receive direction from?
We all had a copy of a search warrant.
Did you also have a copy of a Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Department operations plan?
Same objection, Your Honor. Beyond the scope of direct.
Overruled.
Yes.
Did you read that operations plan?
Yes.
And approximately when did you read it before you searched the main house?
I don't recall the exact time frame.
And do you know the date that you conducted the search?
Yes.
And what was that date?
November the 18th, 2003.
Do you know approximately how many people were involved in that search?
Approximately 69 people.
Were they mostly sheriff's personnel?
Yes.
Did the 69 people who searched Mr. Jackson's home meet somewhere before the search?
Yes.
Where did you meet?
I can't recall the exact street.
Did all 69 people arrive at the same time?
Your Honor, I'm going to object as vague, as to arrive where.
I'll rephrase it, Your Honor. Did all 69 people involved in the search of Mr. Jackson's home enter the premises at the same time, to your knowledge?
I can't recall. We were all behind one another.
What was your assignment?
I was an interviewer and also a searcher.
Were you told specifically where you were going to search?
I can't recall.
How did you end up in the room where you found this particular card, if you know?
It was an area that hadn't been searched yet.
And which area was that?
In the master bathroom.
And did someone tell you it hadn't been searched yet?
Yes.
Who was that?
I can't recall.
Okay. Were you armed at the time?
Yes.
Were the 69 people you mentioned all armed?
I don't know.
Okay. Who entered the premises first?
I don't know.
Okay. Who else searched the master bathroom?
I know Detective Pierce was there. And I don't recall the other detectives that were in there.
Was the area where you found this particular card that says, "I miss you, Daddy Michael," was that area videotaped, to your knowledge?
Yes.
Did you see it being videotaped?
Yes.
Did you arrange for it to be videotaped?
No.
Are you on that videotape?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't know.
Okay. When you found the card, did you touch it?
Yes.
Did you pick it up?
Yes.
Did you read it?
Yes.
Did you take it out of the envelope?
Yes.
Then what did you do with it?
I took it to Detective Padilla.
Was it ever videotaped where you found it, to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Now, when the team of 69 people got together, you got some instructions about what to do with the media, correct?
Not that I can recall.
Do you recall any discussion about media's going to be at Neverland or watching Neverland during the search?
No.
Do you recall any media being there?
I believe there were helicopters above.
Do you know who told the media about this search with 69 people at Mr. Jackson's residence?
No.
But you saw copters everywhere.
Yes.
Did you see people with cameras on the ground?
As we were driving in, there was, I believe, one camera person.
Did you see cameras when you left?
Yes.
Did you see media trucks?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when these 69 people went on the property, people who worked at Neverland were not free to leave, correct?
Correct.
I mean, at some point they were allowed to leave, but for a certain period of time, none of you would allow them to leave the premises, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And to your knowledge, your department issued a press release that day, correct?
I don't recall that.
You were unaware that your department issued a press release announcing this big search of Mr. Jackson's home.
I don't recall specifics on who arranged that.
Do you know if any fingerprint testing has ever been done on this card that has the words, "I miss you, Daddy Michael"?
Not to my knowledge.
Did you arrange for anything like that?
No.
Would it have been your responsibility to do that?
No. I believe it would have been possibly forensics.
Were you wearing gloves when you touched the card?
Yes.
Okay. How many people were in the master bathroom with you when you searched?
I don't recall.
Was it you alone?
No.
Was it more than 3?
I don't recall.
Okay. Is there any other area of the main house that you searched on that day?
Yes.
Where else did you search?
I believe Mr. Jackson's daughter's room.
Okay. Did you search that room alone?
No.
Were you with other people when you searched that room?
Yes.
How many, if you know?
I don't recall.
Now, you indicated you reviewed the operations plan, right?
Yes.
And you read it before the group of 69 people met, right?
Yes.
To your knowledge, everybody else had a copy of that operations plan, right?
Yes.
Okay. What did you see in the dresser, other than the card, if you remember?
I don't recall specifics.
Now, when you looked at this operations plan, you were informed that a prior investigation into Mr. Jackson had been terminated, right?
Object. It calls for hearsay, Your Honor.
Sustained.
It was your understanding that this search with 69 people grew out of an attorney calling Santa Barbara.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. It's beyond the scope of direct.
Sustained. Sustained. It's outside the scope.
Last question. Your property report says you retrieved other greeting cards, correct?
That's not correct.
Is that not correct?
That's not correct.
Okay. It was only one greeting card.
Yes.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. You may step down.
Thank you.
Let's try O'Grady this time. Detective, did you walk off with the bag?
Yes, I did. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Come forward. When you get to the witness stand, please remain standing. Face the clerk and raise your right hand.
I do. Please be seated. State and spell your name for the record.
It's Shawn O'Grady. SHAWN. O, apostrophe, GRADY.
Thank you.
Deputy O'Grady, you're employed by the Sheriff's Department, correct?
That's correct.
How long have you been with the Sheriff's Department?
Since 1997.
And were you assigned to participate in the execution of a search warrant on November 18, 2003?
Yes, I was.
And that was at Neverland Valley Ranch.
That's correct.
And in connection with the execution of that search warrant, did you perform any responsibility about searching?
Yes, I did.
And where were you assigned to search?
I was assigned to search the bathroom area of Michael Jackson's room.
As a result of your looking in the area you've described to the jury, did you see something?
Yes, I did.
And what did you seize?
I seized a book with sexually explicit material in it.
And where was that book located the first time that you saw it?
It was on the border of his bathtub.
I'm going to show you an exhibit that's in evidence as People's Exhibit 62. Do you recognize that photograph?
Yes, I do.
Is that the area you searched?
Yes, it is.
Do you see in that photograph the location of the item that you seized?
Yes, I do.
And does that photograph depict the location of that item at the time you first saw it?
Yes, it does.
Would you please circle and put your initials? And I'm going to ask you to put the number 588 by it. Thank you. Your Honor, at this time I have an item. It's a brown bag with a number 307 in black in the upper right-hand corner, and it's marked as People's 588 for identification purposes. I'd like the bag and its contents marked as Exhibit 588.
All right. That's 588.
Go ahead, or give time to counsel.
We're okay. We're okay.
Okay. Good. The next item I'd like to have marked for identification purposes is a one-page photograph marked as People's Exhibit number 711 for identification purposes. All right. I'm going to ask you some questions. I direct your attention, first of all, to the bag that's in front of you that's been marked as People's 588 for identification purposes, all right. Would you look at the contents of the bag, please? Yeah, just now, you've taken out of that bag a book, correct?
That's correct.
Do you recognize that book?
Yes, I do.
Is that the item you seized on November 11th?
Yes, it is.
At the location depicted in the photograph?
That's correct.
After you took that item into your custody and care, what did you do with it then?
Took it to where we were doing actually, I went to Lieutenant Klapakis and asked him if this is something that he wanted seized.
Okay. And after that conversation, what did you do?
He said it was, and we took it over where we were bagging the evidence up.
And was that where Detective Padilla was?
That is correct.
Is that book in the same condition as it was on the day that you seized it?
It appears to be, yeah.
And with regard to the exhibit that's in front of you, 711, do you see that?
Yes.
Does 711 accurately depict the front cover of that book?
Yes, it does.
Your Honor, I'd move that 588 and 711 be admitted into evidence.
No objection, Your Honor.
They're admitted.
And the exhibit that's on the overhead there is Exhibit 711, correct?
That's correct.
And that's the one that you said accurately depicts the front cover of the book that you have in front of you, which is 588, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, thank you. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Are you going to want the Elmo on?
No, Your Honor. That's okay. But I would like to see the item of evidence. Mr. O'Grady, you seized a book titled Bidgood, and the name is Toshin at the bottom. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And do you know where that book came from?
No.
Do you know that Mr. Toshin is a German photographer who was going to photograph the Jackson family?
I have no idea, no.
Are you aware that Mr. Toshin sent this to Mr. Jackson?
No, I do not.
And that's Peter Pan on the cover, correct?
I don't know. It looks like a person playing a pan flute. Could be like a mythological person or something.
Okay, no further questions.
Jeff Ellis.
Do you have any other questions?
No, I'm sorry. No further questions.
Thank you. You may step down.
I'll take those out of the way for you.
Remain standing. Face the clerk, please. Raise your right hand.
I do. Please be seated. State and spell your name for the record.
My name is Jeffry Ellis. Jefffery. Ellis, Ellis.
Thank you.
Mr. Ellis, you're employed by me.
That's correct. By the District Attorney's Office.
And how long have you been a detective, investigator with the Santa Barbara District Attorney's Office?
For 4 years.
And prior to that, did you have any law enforcement experience?
I did. I was a police officer in Lompoc for 9 years.
Now, on November 18, 2003, you participated in the execution of a search warrant at Neverland Valley Ranch, correct?
I did.
And during the course of your assignment there, were you involved in doing some searching?
I did.
And during the time that you were searching, did you seize an item?
I did.
And do you recall where that item was that you seized?
It was in the what I would describe as the lower portion of the bedroom, Michael Jackson's bedroom, the downstairs.
And where downstairs?
Near the fireplace.
And was it sitting on something, or on the floor, or do you recall?
It was in a bag, a B. Dalton book bag on the floor, as I recall.
And then when you seized that item, what did you do with it?
I gave it to the deputy that was logging in evidence.
Would that be Detective Padilla?
Yes, Detective Padilla.
All right. Your Honor, I've shown counsel the 2 exhibits I would like to have marked. The first one is a brown paper bag that contains the number, #313 inches at the top. And it has an evidence tag number 589 for identification purposes. And a photograph, one-page photograph that we've had marked as People's 710 for identification purposes.
No objection, Your Honor.
Well, let me get there first.
All right.
I appreciate the cooperation, but... All right. Detective Ellis, first of all, why don't you take a look at the book, the exhibit 589? You're removing the book from the bag, correct?
That's correct.
Do you recognize that book?
I do.
And was that the book that you seized from Mr. Jackson's downstairs bedroom area?
That appears to be the same book.
Now, with regard to the exhibit, is it in the same condition as it was at the time you seized it?
It appears to be.
All right. And with regard to the exhibit 710, the photograph, do you see that?
Yes, I do.
Does that photograph accurately depict the front page of the exhibit 589?
It does.
All right. Thank you. Why don't you hand me just that? Your Honor, now I'm going to move to admit it into evidence.
No objection.
Both items.
Please, Your Honor. 589 and 710.
They're admitted.
And we're going to display the item 710 on the Elmo, Your Honor. Detective Ellis, that's the item that you seized in the bag on the floor.
It is.
That's the front cover of it.
The front cover, yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
It's time for our break.